Hello, everyone. First off, I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe in these really unusual times. I wish you well. Thank you so much for taking the time for this webinar. I'm really excited to talk to you about a topic which is personally really close to my heart, something that I get asked about a lot, and something that I was trying to figure out myself not very many years ago: how to break into product management. Whew. So, what are we going to talk about today? I'll give a little bit of an introduction about myself, some ways of choosing product management as a career, and whether it is a career that you want to choose, my own journey into product management, and some strategic and practical tips I wish someone told me when I was trying to figure this out myself. So with that, let's get started. So why am I giving you this talk? Why am I even talking about this when there are tons of books, blogs, so much information that's available on the internet? My name is Richa Pareek. I'm a senior product manager at Uber. I have 13 plus years of industry experience in consulting, QA, program management, and now product management. And I've worked across several industries, from fintech to ads to SMB to retail to nonprofit. And I did not always have a plan to become a product manager. And I took some steps over the span of my career to make this happen for me. And which is why I want to talk about what worked for me and what could likely work for a lot of other people. So double clicking a little bit on my own journey. So the one thing that I have realized in my career span of 13 plus years is that the journey is never quite linear. I started out of grad school as a consultant, and then very soon the startup bug hit me, and I wanted to revolutionize the e-commerce segment in India. Clearly, I didn't do it right, and I failed miserably. And then I took a path of joining a lesser known startup over some of the more established companies that I could have joined. And that decision ended up giving me the most foundational learnings of my career. I spent several years at Yodlee before I became a program manager and subsequently a product manager at Google. And amongst all of these professional jobs that I held, I also built my own nonprofit called Longtail, which is in its 4th year of running. So this is where I have been before my current gig at Uber. And some things that have stayed really consistent in this entire journey has been these 4 points. Every time I have failed, I have learned something from it. So be it my career as a consultant or my own startup or projects in my jobs that I held that did not work. Each of these things actually taught me a lot of things that I know now. Sometimes taking risks helped me. And what really became an ammunition for me was building this hip pocket skill and becoming this go-to person for handling any complex projects. I just always got stuff done. And amongst all of this information that lives on the internet, all of the books that are available, around self-help and career help, strategies to advance your career. Mostly people always need to take charge of their own career themselves. So when I decided to move into product management, despite all the books and resources available to me, there were things that I really needed to do on my own to make that happen. So before we go into that, we all know that product management as a career is a combination of technical and soft skills. PMs can come from several backgrounds, including engineering, program management, sales, marketing, design. There are different types of PMs. There are growth PMs, there are technical PMs, there are consumer versus enterprise PMs. But the one theme that stays consistent for product managers, no matter where you come from, no matter what you're working on, is the focus on customers. Great PMs are obsessed with ensuring that their customers get the most value out of the product that they're building, and that they build what really adds value to their customers. And while doing all of that, building certain relevant skills is crucial. Good PMs need to know how the sauce is built. What are fundamentals on which their product is built? What is the market talking about? What is the product market fit? What are the competitors doing? What are the research papers saying? A good PM should also have a design hat on to ensure that their products are easy to use, to navigate, and to be able to understand really well by their customers. And while you try and pack all of these skills, the one thing that is most important to get done is execution. Good PMs ensure that all the visions and the plans that they create do actually get executed. And they do that by communicating really well with their stakeholders, by influencing teams and stakeholders who they do not have direct authority over, and by leading their teams with their vision. And amongst all of these things, they also need to ensure that they guard their time really well and prioritize the most important things that need to get done. So, how do you know if product management is really the right career path for you? So even before deciding to break into product management, the step zero before that is really identifying if you want to be a product manager. And that answer is kind of somewhere deep rooted within what your own career aspirations are. One doesn't want to be a product manager because, hey, being a product manager is cool. There always has to be a fundamental reason for why you want to do a certain thing. So it always starts with introspection. Why do you want to be a product manager? Because once you understand, a lot of things become clear. You understand what you want to work on. Once you know that you want to be a product manager because you either love building products, or there are some other reasons, or you like, no matter what you do, you want to be close to what your customers want, then you try and that gives you to your next set of answers on what is it that you want to work on and how you're going to get there. And when you identify that is when you start evaluating opportunities. When is the right time when you make that move happen? What are the opportunities available? What are the constraints that it may not be the right time? You may have to take like a level downgrade or a pay cut. Is that something that you're okay with? You may have to change cities. You may have to join a much smaller organization. Are those constraints okay with you, or are those more like opportunities? Those are some of the evaluations that become much easier when you start with that introspection stage. And while doing all of that, it is very important to continue to get feedback on how you're doing professionally. And that feedback can come from managers, that feedback can come from your mentors and sponsors, what we're going to touch about in a few slides, and try and really assess how you're doing in that whole sphere of set of people that you work along with, and how you can actually make that change happen. So in my head and in my understanding of my experience of moving into product management, there are 6 key things that are super important. Number 1, you want to ensure that you define your goals and figure out what you really truly want to do. Number 2, it may sound like an opposite what you want to do, but building expertise in your core role, in your current role, is crucial to your success and moving to another role. That credibility, that being excellent and really good at your current job helps build trust. And that is a key factor in moving forward. Number 3, pocketing some small wins. Sometimes 20%, 50% projects can get exposure to a brand new role that we only know from the bylanes. So when I thought I wanted to be a product manager, I was really enamored by all these cool ideas that my PMs brought to the table, and they told, they talked about how we're going to execute on them. But I never quite understood how the sauce was made. And I started talking to some PMs, and I asked them about certain projects that they were willing to let me run with. And I picked on some 10%, 20% projects that actually gave me the flavor of what these PMs do. And that was a stepping stone in me really realizing that, yes, now I fully understand that this is what I want to do, because now I have a flavor of it. Number 4, take risks. Think beyond your comfort zone, stretching yourself, doing things or picking on projects which you would never really want to do because they make you uneasy, they're too long, it's not a domain you understand. There could be several reasons for not doing something, but there's always one reason for doing something. Why not? If anything, you're going to learn something out of it. So taking risks is very crucial. Number 5, no matter what you do, get stuff done. Even if it's a 10% project, or even if it's your own project, get things done. It's crucial to building that credibility. If you do small things right, people are going to be able to trust you to give you bigger projects, because they know that no matter what, you're going to get things done. And that is super important. Number 6, patience. Things don't happen overnight, especially when you're not from a conventional background or when you've not always been a product manager. It becomes a very strange cycle of when you apply to roles, people are like, no, we want a prior product management experience. But well, I don't have a product management experience. But if I don't get to work as a product manager, I will never have a product manager experience. And that way, I'll probably never get called for interviews. And that cycle just goes on. And sometimes it can feel never ending. But it's important to understand that everyone has a different journey. And sometimes you might fail a lot more than others will. And you may have to work a lot harder than others do. But as long as you're really true to what you really want to do, which is number 1 in this little pie, you would always find a reason to continue to do that. All of us know this guy, Steve Jobs. Huge respect. He's built the most amazing products. He has laid foundations for some revolutionary products. I mean, he doesn't need any introductions. I was listening to a conversation of Steve Jobs, and the one thing that he said stood with me for a very long time. And it is something that I go back to very often, connecting the dots. Sometimes when you're looking forward, you don't quite understand what lies ahead. But things always make sense when you look backwards. And why am I telling you this? Let's talk a little bit about my own journey into product management. So I talked about some of the points, building credibility, successfully leading some key initiatives, did seamless execution, taking on some 20% projects, reaching out to people for mentorship, and then earning some sponsors through my good work, some of the projects that I led well. And then looking into some career risks of doing rotation programs. Even when I was doing really well as a product program manager, I took on a risk of doing a rotation program to be a product manager. That could mean that I would have to get down leveled, but I was so determined that I wanted to do that, that I made that happen. And why did I do that? What gave me that determination to want to do something and work so hard at it? Was connecting the dots. When I was in this phase, when I was trying to figure out if I wanted to stick with program management and continue to grow there versus actually become a product manager and start almost afresh, I looked back into my career. I made a little list of things that I most thoroughly enjoyed doing. And the one common theme that stood out of that entire exercise was that I loved creating things. I loved creating experiences. I loved building products. I loved understanding the connection between what users want and what products do for the things that users want. And that kind of stood out in the kind of projects I was always excited to take on. It also stood out in the kind of projects that did not make me so happy. And doing that exercise made it even more clear on the path that I wanted to take. So all of the risks that I took became obvious because I was so determined that I wanted to make it happen. These risks didn't matter because in the grand scheme of things, they seemed like really small things to do or small things to lose in order to do what I really wanted to do. So now let's talk a little bit about some strategic things we can do to make into connecting the dots. Go back into your career history and identify things that you have thoroughly enjoyed doing, projects that you're very proud of, and what you did in those projects to make it successful. And that will help you build your story, build your narrative of why you're a good product manager. And that will also help you expand your network because once you have your elevator pitch on why you are a good PM, that will help you talk to more people to be able to talk about your skills and the value that you bring to the table. Finding mentors is very important. I can't emphasize enough on the power of good mentors and the impact that good mentors can have in somebody's career. And while mentors can help in navigating through your day-to-day project level or even career level decisions, it's the sponsors that can do a lot of things that you won't even know that they are doing for you. And the interesting thing about sponsors is one's got to earn them. You cannot walk up to someone and say, hey, can you be my sponsor? No. Sponsors are usually people who trust you for all the work that you do, who are in very high leadership positions, who believe in your skills and your caliber, and they nudge you forward when the right opportunity strikes, or when they think that there's a project that can be a great match to your skill set. They can help find those opportunities for you, and you won't even know that they will do that for you. And which is why being really good at what you do is so important, because that can help build that trust with your sponsors. Now, these are very strategic things, yes, but fine. How do you make it happen, right? Like, this is not going to get me the PM job. Like, tell me more. So let's talk a little bit about one more strategic thing that actually falls into the more practical aspects. The one thing that all of us have in our control is being able to take more stretch projects, something that you've never done before, or a vertical that you don't have an understanding of, or a domain that you don't get at all. Can you find 10, 20% of your time to actually take on a stretch project? And what that will do is it'll give you a sense of doing something beyond your comfort zone. And that will also give a lot of understanding of what other projects and other things which are beyond your own work universe look like. So that was all strategic. How do you make it happen, right? That is the original question. Why? Tell me already. Okay, so let's go one by one on that. Number one, usually making a transition into any ladder, being and from engineering to program or program to product, is usually easier when you started your own company, or you're even better if you're your own team. There are too many variables when you're trying to change careers. So it's always good to limit those variables to two. Changing into product management itself is a big variable. Now, if you add to it a new company or a new team or a new geography or new domain, you're just adding too many variables to the mix, and it becomes super complicated to make that happen. So it's always good to limit variables to two. Start with your own company and see if you can actually start with your own team where you already have an established trust, a set of people that you're comfortable working with, and who will be open to you expanding your role into something new. So always helpful. A lot of companies, I was lucky, I worked at Google, had a formal rotation program. So always check into those. But sometimes there are companies that don't even have formal, but even then have been able to make transitions. So either looking at rotation programs or picking on some small projects and delivering on them is key. So maybe your company does not have a formal rotation program, but your team has PMs, your organization has PMs. Go talk to them, understand if there are any projects that they would need help on. Everyone needs help. If anything that I have learned in my experience as a PM, we're always stretched. We would always be happy to get someone to help us on doing small projects, and we'll be more than happy to do that. So talking to engineers, talking to PMs, and talking to cross-functional partners also helps. Sometimes they can tell you about projects that have not formally been announced, or projects that your leadership may probably not think that may require an add-on PM. But those are some partners who can actually give you a more understanding or a better understanding of what their world looks like, and if you can help there. And while you're doing that, auditing your skills and working on the skills you're missing is very important. And which is what these rotation programs or these small projects or these 20% projects can help you do. They can help you bridge that gap into skills that you would really need to make that final transition happen versus the ones that you currently don't have. And that is a good time to bridge that gap, to really become solid at things or skills that you right now may probably not be able to flex so much in your current role. Finding a hip pocket skill and building on it is always important. I'll give you an example. When I was a program manager, the one thing that everyone associated with me was no matter what you give to Richa, she will get done. No matter what kind of a project it was, she'll figure it out. And surprisingly, that is still something that has stayed with me. It is my hip pocket skill. My hip pocket skill is to actually simplify the most complex things, break it down into such small nuggets that it's easy to process and it's easy to navigate. And it's really interesting that it is still my most useful skill, even when I'm a product manager. Even when I get thrown at some vague, very unusual problems that I don't know how to solve, I use my skill. I break it down. I simplify it to the extent that I can explain it to a 5-year-old, and that helps me find solutions. So finding that hip pocket skill and building on it is important, no matter if you do 20% projects or if you do 100% projects, or even if you're doing like some smallish projects within your team or your organization. Preparing is super important because interviews will matter, and they do matter a lot. So here are some resources that I personally found super helpful to break into product management. Cracking the PM Interview was a book that I highly recommend that worked really well for me. And I found some mock interview sites that gave me insights into what kind of questions I needed to be prepared for and what I should be doing to build on my skills that I did not have. So with that, I hope this session was useful, and I hope that more and more people will find the courage and the motivation to find a career path that truly matters and to make that change happen. Thank you. Bye-bye.